Well, I'm glad to see you all today. Thank you for coming. I happen to have a Tulia address myself. So I moved here a year and a half ago, and I love it. I love the area. What I'm going to talk to you today about is the process of sculpting, the foundry process, and a little bit about my experience and how, well, just the path I've taken. I'm not saying it's the right one, it's just the one I took. It wasn't probably the easiest way, but I did learn things along the way. I started sculpting 27 years ago. I went to a foundry-sponsored, it was just a workshop where you could learn about the process I'm going to show you today. And they basically gave you a piece of wax, and you made something from it, and they showed you the molding process. And although we didn't mold them, we went and casted them directly from the wax. It gave me a taste of sculpture, and it was something I knew I wanted to do, and that I was going to do whether I could make money at it or not, because I loved it. Throughout school, I always drew, painted, wanted to be an artist, but when it came time to graduate, my parents said, you need to do something where you can make money. So I went and got a two-year business associate's degree and became an administrative assistant. But all the while I did art. I never let go of art because I loved it. I just wasn't sure how I could ever make a living at it. After I had my son, I went back to college and got my bachelor's degree in political science, and that's when I was starting to do more and more sculpture. I had cast a couple bronze pieces at that time, and then I was working in other clays and giving them all away to family and friends, you know, for Christmas, because I just wanted to make them, but I didn't feel like they were good enough yet to go try to get in a gallery with. So over time, I did get good enough to get into a gallery and to do art shows. And so it became a business. But all the while, I did keep working as an executive assistant at that time, working on pension plans and doing all these really left brain things. But they actually served me well later on, and I'll tell you why. So before I go too far down that road, I want to give you kind of what a snapshot is from you get a commission, somebody wants you to sculpt, in this case, their horse, and the steps I took to do from the concept to larger than life-size bronze. And then I'll talk a little bit about other materials I use as well that have been really good for me and for sales. So we're going to play just a short clip. It's of the horse that I was commissioned to do. And he's a reining horse in Colorado. And his big thing is the spin. And that's the maneuver they do in reining. So this horse is a real show-off. And he is a champion horse, and the owner told me, I want to sculpture my horse, but I don't know what pose I want. I don't want him just standing there. So I had to get to know this horse. And this, when I saw this, I thought, that's it. This horse does a full 360 in 3 steps. And he's an amazing mover. And so I thought, that's the pose. So I got an armature, and this is an armature for a person, stick figure. And what you do, you put foil on it, you kind of put some bulk on it, and then you add clay. And it's a petroleum-based clay that I use. It never dries out. You can heat it in the microwave. You can make it cold in the freezer, depending on if you want it soft or hard. And you begin building your piece. So, and I wish I had one to actually be working on with you right now, but we don't have enough time to be doing that and just going through the process. But so from the wire and the foil, you end up with a finished piece, which this is the horse in clay, and this is how he started. And so that's quarter scale, quarter of life size. Okay, that's what I took to the owner, and she said, I love the concept, and she hired me to do the big one. So from here, it goes to an enlargement phase. And the old way of doing it used to be with light projectors. People would shine the shadow of the piece up to the size they wanted and begin cutting out the foam based on the shadow, and then turning it and cutting it out, and trying to, enlarge a piece that way, just like you would a photo. Now, thanks to technology, we have scanners and CNC machines that cut it out of foam for you, and it's precise. So and it's expensive, but the time savings and the precision are worth it. So I had this enlarged. You can go to the next one. And so the enlarged foam was this big. Then I apply a thin layer of clay and put all the detail back in. And so there's still a lot of work that happens once it's been enlarged in foam, but it is a time saving. So this piece, he's 9 feet long and 6 feet to the wither. Okay, the actual horse was 15 hands, so he's about this tall to the wither. This one's this tall. So that's life in a quarter is the size. After that, it goes to be molded. And this is a rubber that's applied, just like this little mold I have here, and then they put a plaster back on it to support the rubber. And you can see these sections here, each piece is a piece of mold, because they can't cast anything larger than this at the foundry in the furnace, okay? So it has to be reassembled after it's molded. And this is a sample of the mold here. This is just a simple 2-part mold, but you can see the rubber's pretty flimsy and the plaster backing. So on the next one, they put wax in here, and they build it up about 1/4 inch. And that's called the lost wax method. So they paint it in, and then they put the two sides together and they swish it around. Or and that's for a small piece. In the instance of my horse with the big pieces, they just swish it around and have it about 1/4 inch thick, and then they leave them in a panel. Okay, the next one. So this is a picture of wax chasing. So once the wax is removed from the mold, and on a piece like this, when you pull it apart, you're going to have a seam where these two pieces came together. And that's what they're chasing out, are the seams. Just like if you ever did ceramics out of a mold, you have to clean that seam. It's kind of the same thing. Okay, and then the next slide. This is spruing, and they're adding a gateway onto the piece. And they do that with every piece, because when the wax is melted out, and I'll show you from the shell, it has to have a place for the metal to go in. And it also has to have a vent so that when the metal flows, it won't have an air pocket. The air has to be able to escape. So they do gates and vents by adding these on in wax. Okay, next one. Then they take it and put a silica sand on. It's several layers. It's very fine. It gets very fine detail. They cover that, and they dip it, and then finally they put a shell over it, kind of like a plaster shell almost. And then once the shell is dried, next one, it goes into a furnace, and the wax is melted out. So now you have a shell that's hollow, and they pour metal. The molten bronze is poured in. Okay, and once it's cooled, they break it off and throw the shell away. So if you sculpt from wax, you're going to have one piece. That's why a mold, because you can have more than one wax in a mold, and you can do more than one, but each shell is broken off. So then they so this is back to my horse. These are the bronze panels. They're going to take all these pieces and weld them back together and begin to put the horse back together. And even with a small bronze, there's welding, because a lot of times they'll have to cut off legs. They'll have to put a hole in the side for the vent. All these things have to be welded back together, and then the weld seams have to be chased out. So also, a large piece like this has to have steel armature inside that gives it support. For instance, this tail is big and it's heavy and it hangs out, and it's too cantilevered out not to have any support. So there's steel rods that are put in. But remember, you can see how thin a life-size bronze is. They're really only that thick. You know, when you see them, you think they're, you know, solid or something, and they're not. But even at that, this piece weighed about 900 pounds. So you can imagine if it was solid, it would be like immovable. But okay, the next. This is just another picture of welding. You can kind of see where they're welding a leg on and where the seams are. Okay. And then they go to chasing the seams out, and then they polish the whole piece with pads to get all the debris, the oil, everything off. When they come right out of the shell, it's really ugly. And it has a lot of just kind of corrosion on it. All that has to be removed, or patina, which is a chemical process, won't stick. So they get it all shined up, everything's right, texture's back, they sandblast it to remove any other oils, and then they take it to the patina room. A patina is a chemical process, it's not paint. They put liver of sulfur on the piece to turn it black, and then they highlight the areas where you might want, for instance, they want the nose of this deer lighter, so you take a pad and you rub the black back. Maybe you want to highlight some other areas. And then they'll add like ferric oxide, I think it's an oxide, or cupric. There's a whole litany of chemicals they can add depending on the color you want. Anymore, they can do any color just about in bronze, but it's a chemical reaction with the metal. It is not a color that's added. Okay. From there, they lacquer it and then wax it. And the lacquer and the wax protect it, whether it's indoors or outside. Bronze will corrode. It has to be protected just like your car. You know, it has to be waxed, or it doesn't rust, but it's similar too. I mean, it corrodes. So that's that. This is my horse being installed with a crane at the owner's property. And then the next slide just shows it in place. So from here, let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit about other mediums I use. So have any of you heard of raku firing? It's an ancient Japanese process, and you come out with very spontaneous looks to the glaze. I mean, so I sculpt it in clay. Have any of you ever used earthenware clay that you put in a kiln when you fire? That's cool. Okay. It's the same clay. Has to be hollow or it'll blow up in the kiln. So I sculpt the horse out of clay. I put a glaze on it. It goes into a kiln, and up to 1800 degrees. I pull it out with tongs, and it catches on fire. And then I snuff it out, because that's part of the carbonization process that happens to give you some of the cool effects that you get. And then I clean them up. Now, because I like to sculpt horses and ceramic clay is not good for legs because it breaks, I developed a way to have the legs cast in aluminum, and then I add them to the ceramic body later. And then I've been adding juniper wood from the Palo Duro Canyon lately as well, and turquoise. And so that's called mixed media, when you use other materials or several materials. And I've been doing the raku pieces for a lot of years, and there's one in the gallery. It's been really good because they're original, they're unique. I can do it all at home, so the cost is low compared to the foundry process is very expensive. I mean, the mold may cost $500 for a small piece. For that big horse, it's $6,000. And if you're casting pieces that haven't already been pre-sold, it's out of your pocket until you get it sold. That's part of the reason I kept this job as an administrative assistant for so many years, because I wanted to get a body of work together and to get in galleries where I could sell my work and have a really solid foundation to be a full-time artist that could support myself. Oh gosh, okay. So let's go to the last slide. Opportunities for sculptors. You don't want to do it my way, you want to go right into art. There are other ways. You can go work for a foundry, either as independent or for the foundry. For instance, welders make $50 an hour, and all the people in the foundry, I would say, are artists. They're all doing their own art, but yet they go to work and make a living with a trade. So there are other ways to support yourself as an artist as you gain ground to get into a gallery or to do your own art shows. Special effects sculptors, there's still a call for that, whether it's sculpting big stuff in Vegas or going to Hollywood and they still do a lot of sculptures, not all done on computers.